Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have John Robbins with us, and John, it's great to have you. You have a long history in commercial real estate, so I'd just love to hear how you got to where you are now in basically working with government contracts.
Okay, well, I spent a good deal of time working with some large national companies, starting with CBRE and Cushman & Wakefield. I was in the development business for a while with Lincoln Property Company primarily and some other developers. And in '93, after, as I told you earlier, driving down the road, I called my wife and said, I can't do this commute anymore. I'm going to start my own company. And she, as I told you, very kindly said, well, it's about time. So
off you went.
So in '93, with a card table in a back bedroom, which my daughter to this day tells me inspires her, I started off and with pardon the term, the old Rolodex, just started calling everybody that I'd done work with and known over the years, and shortly had a very successful consulting practice going on, repositioning portfolios, solving some tough problems for corporate real estate managers, and that type of thing. And in '98, I teamed up with a man who had hired me to help him buy brokerage companies when he was president of Grubb & Ellis, John Carpenter, and we formed Carpenter Robbins. And we were a commercial brokerage company, just out there doing tenant representation primarily, and a lot of smaller disposition work for small properties, and realized that we needed to get into a business with more velocity to it. And about the same time, we got ourselves a contract with the federal government just in the immediate Bay Area that expanded to 4 Western states. And then through a series of I consider it pretty fortunate circumstances, we ended up where we became one of 6 national brokerage companies that represent GSA in the United States in the leasing of space. GSA, for those who don't know it, is the landlord of the U.S. government for all but a few specialized agencies. So that means everybody from Social Security to FBI need facilities, and the federal government decided a long time ago to outsource that. And so there is a very small group of us who are work in that area, mostly subsidiaries of larger companies, and a few like ours where we're smaller businesses, but doing the same thing and competing directly with those bigger businesses for these contracts. So that's how we got into it. Today we represent GSA in the Western 18 states directly. We're the broker, if you will, the tenant rep broker. We also represent Department of Veterans Affairs as a national broker for them, along with several other companies, locating and negotiating for outpatient facilities and occasionally other areas like cemeteries and things like that. We also have work going on in the disposition area. We're one of 7 companies on the disposition contract for GSA. And I'm talking too fast, tell me. And we do some subcontracting work and direct work on odds and ends, I call them, but we're doing things like we're doing work on the FAA repositioning of all its portfolio through a subcontracting. And then occasionally we're just starting to build that part of our business. We're assisting landlords in negotiation of contracts, always where there's no conflict of interest. And that we just literally got started on last year. We decided that it was good business. All our competitors were doing it, and we felt it was an area of growth that we could get into. We have I know that sounds like a lot. We actually operate with about 18 people. Our headquarters are San Ramon, California, but we have people in New Jersey and Philadelphia and Denver and Kentucky and Seattle and all over California. And most of our people are remote workers. So we were literally remote before COVID. So while it was hard, we actually were able to immediately continue our work through the whole COVID thing because most of our people were remote already and we were set up for it.
So are these agents under you, or are they actually employees under you?
Some are agents and some are employees. Some are 1099s and some are W-2s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
just depends on what the contract is and how they're working on it. The tenant rep business, we're a broker. We get paid commissions by the landlords, just like every other broker. And I have a series of 1099 brokers who have worked for us a long time. One just celebrated his 21st anniversary with us.
Wow.
So we've had a multiple. I never thought this would be the case, but I've actually got multiple people who have retired from our business.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's been a great, wonderful ride. I mean, just never would have realized getting into this little niche business would give us so much opportunity and I'd be able to do it with a lot of really great people and with relatively little turnover actually as a business.
So I'm curious, when the GSA comes out with a need, do you end up having to bid against Cushman and Wakefield, or do they give you some and they give Cushman some? How does that all work?
It depends on the contract. So most of the contracts are 5 years at a click. And so each contract has a separate set of rules about how they do work assignment. Some of the previous contracts, there was direct competition. Some later on had more complicated systems based on performance. Where, there's no place else I know of where literally our people get reviewed 4 or 5 times during the transaction as to their performance.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that's one of the forces that drives us. And so they rate you on a scale of 1 to 5, and we've had the very good fortune to be running between I'm going to say this 4.6 to 5.0 over the
Wow.
last 10 years of the contract.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, we work hard. I mean, it's not people think it's you just get an assignment, you go do it. But there's everybody has security clearances. Everybody has in my company all the way down to the lowest clerk level. We train them extensively. They all have been through courses on federal leasing, and we continually update them because things continuously change. Lease clauses changed by the federal government, especially now. There's a whole lot of changes taking place in all the federal contracting everywhere, because the federal acquisition regulations have just gone through a major revision and making it really, I think, in long term easier to do business with the government, which is the good news. And so today it's basically based on performance and how and workload and things like that. So.
Well, so I'm curious, you had said earlier that the government in their leasing activities has really embraced AI. So I'm curious how that all goes together.
Well, I think what they've done is let's put it this way. You've got to compare 5 or 6 proposals from real estate property owners, and AI is a great tool for starting that comparison. So you can just say, tell me, what the differences are, and look at, imagine you had 7 or 8 proposals to have to compare and contrast and figure out what was in the best interest of the government and what was the best financial, and then blend those two to make a business decision on where you're going to lease space. And they're using it a lot. Now, they did lose a lot of employees during the last 24 months, and as resizing of government took place, and so they are relying on AI a lot to make up for some of that.
Wow. That's very interesting. So, working in the comparison field, I could see where that would be very, very helpful. So, is that generated from your side or is that generated from the government side?
No, the internal work is generated from the government side. And,
Ah,
we're using it internally for our evaluations. They're using it separately for theirs.
ah.
So,
So, I'm curious, they went through this whole Anthropic thing. So, I'm curious what platform they're using or what platform you're using.
I can't. I can tell you we've used Chat GPT. We use the Microsoft product. We use Microsoft 365 basically to operate the company. So mostly we're using that product.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And
the Microsoft side.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, so what do you think is happening out there? Can you predict any crystal ball in the kind of government leasing world? Is it busy right now? Do you think it's going to continue to be busy? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to get a lot busier. It's been very slow for the last 14 months.
Oh,
There was a downsizing in GSA. Now they're, carefully restructuring it and using AI a lot more, using technical tools a lot more to be able to deliver services. And we expect that there'll be an uptick in government leasing in the next 6 months, frankly.
oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
and that's good news for, especially for the office building business, because that's really one of the areas where most of the space that the federal government leases um, uh, goes is into office space. Not very much, a little bit industrial, uh, uh, virtually no retail except for the recruiting offices, which are usually done by the Corps of Engineers as a separate um, uh, requirement fulfillment. There are some companies, some federal entities like VA that have their own authority to go find leases. So there are
Hmm.
some agencies who operate separately. And then, of course, there's the Department of Defense, which is a completely separate
Oh,
operation
wow.
from GSA.
So I'm curious, at some point, given the government downsizing, were they trying to sublease space?
Um, there was some of that going on. Mostly it was focused on renewals, extensions, things like that, and a few, requirements that had to be fulfilled because they were, there was an agency that had a lease expiring and they had to stay in their space, so they would, you know, uh, renew it in a certain way. I'm being a little cagey here, not because I just have to be a little careful about some of the things I say.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I can only imagine. I'm surprised, that we can talk this much about it, just kind of about how the whole process works, because it's very intriguing to me. Uh,
it
as
is
we
a
talked earlier, I had a agent call me from the East Coast saying, "Hey, that government requirement, and could I help him?" And that's a whole different category of government leasing that goes on out there.
well, it's a guy trying to wedge him. I'm not going to be disrespectful here, but we find occasionally people who don't understand the process and don't understand that there are real brokers with federal contracts try to wedge themselves in. Usually, it's younger brokers I find who aren't aware of the process that the federal government actually goes through. But there are only 6 companies that represent GSA in leasing work. I should be clear, GSA is everybody from Social Security to all the federal law enforcement agencies.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
it's a broad group of people, of agencies who they do work for, and there's a few exceptions, like VA as an example, where the agency goes and directly negotiates their leases. But the majority of the federal government, and I think you'll see much more of that. Not much more. I think you'll see those who were historically doing their own will probably merge in under the GSA to do the work for them, because GSA is really set up to be the landlord for the federal government, and
Right.
that's their function.
So I'm curious when you said that you were basically rated at five different steps throughout the process. I'm curious how that happens. Is it so? Assume, say, finding a space is one area that maybe you get rated on, and then negotiating
Right.
a lease is another.
Finding the space, um, uh, uh, you know, I'm grasping
Yeah, right, right.
spots,
But yeah,
but yeah, each step in the process is evaluated
yeah.
by the contracting officers that you report to,
Wow.
and they have a very organized system. It's actually very organized. And there's you have an opportunity to respond and say, hey, I don't think it should be this. And you can do that response because you have a written explanation of every level of 1 through 5 performance. It's a very defined process, and
Wow.
yeah, and it's been great for us because it's really made us better at the work because there is a real third party rating you on your performance, and that doesn't exist in most of commercial real estate.
No, I don't think other than sort of word of the mouth, I don't think I've ever really been rated as to my performance. It's all based on the fact that you get referrals and people like you and you do good work and so forth. But there's no 1 through 5 rating that I've ever seen in a process. So anyway, so the good side of that is probably you know what your expectations are, and then
Yes,
you can perform according to those expectations.
that's correct. And as I told you, I've got most of the team working in the field doing these leases has been either is previously in real estate, some form or fashion, and is also very experienced and trained at the work they're doing. I mentioned one fella has been with us 21 years. These people are experts at the processing, and that's the hard part to explain when you're talking to the brokerage industry is we don't think deal, we think process because
Mm.
it takes 6 months to 18 months to do a lease with the federal government.
Yeah, it's not, here we go, let's get this done and close the deal.
Yeah, the 90 days we're done.
Yeah, right. That's not
Yeah.
happening.
No, and
Yeah.
we also are responsible, which is very different from the brokerage business, for once the lease is signed to oversee the tenant improvement process.
Oh, wow.
And so we are directly involved with the construction team, making sure that they do that. And we have a whole group that does nothing but project management work for the federal government, and we're doing some other strictly project management work. But all of our leases now, once the lease is signed, it's turned over to a project manager, construction type project manager who takes it through the remainder of the lease to get it ready to go. Because obviously, we get paid. We're like every broker. We typically get paid, half on signing and half on occupancy. Well,
Right,
we
right,
have a real role in occupancy, uh,
right.
unlike the private sector, where usually after the lease is signed, the brokerage company doesn't have much to do with it. And we're literally we do punch list walkthroughs. We
Wow.
yeah we finish up all the paperwork and then we're done. So we can spend 3 years on a project in some cases.
Yeah, they're long term, that's for sure.
Yep.
So I'm curious, are the parks under GSA or is
No,
that separate?
now there's a good example. No, Park Services have their own real estate group. They do their own real estate because, most of their offices and buildings are in fairly remote locations. There's not a lot of alternatives often, other than building a new building for them. And they have their own separate group. That's a good example, as with VA, of an agency that is separate from the GSA program.
But you're not representing the parks, it
No,
sounds.
they actually do have a contract, and at one point they had a national broker. I don't think they do right now,
Mm.
just based on what I've seen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't have one. And then also keep in mind, Department of Defense has their own group. Corps of Engineers does as I mentioned earlier, does recruiting stations, and that's a retail lease usually, someplace, in a local community.
Right.
So there's a lot of different people involved in the federal government. And then, you get into dispositions and you have a whole different group of people who are doing, there's dispositions of these buildings. The courthouse in Oregon was the first one that was done. And we have a program where we compete among those companies that are on the contract. There's 7 of us to provide disposition services. They just did one in Mission Viejo, the old building down there that looks like, it was a brutalist building that was built, but on an incredible location. I mean, just phenomenal location. And there's a whole process going on behind the scenes of identifying buildings, figuring out how you're going to sell them, determining if there's issues. We're doing marketing now. We've just finished putting a marketing package together for a new building that's going to come out. We're just doing the marketing for that. So the spread of kinds of contracts that we have is very broad, and we're trying to make it broader because not be too dependent on a single contract for the work.
Right. So does that mean you potentially, if the parks came out and said, "Hey, we're looking for brokers," you would potentially bid on that contract? It sounds like.
Yeah, we could absolutely. The U.S. Postal Service has their own real estate group, and gosh, we did 400 post offices back when we were just starting our company, all in California. There are post offices in every little town.
Oh yeah.
In the country, and some of them are if they go away, you literally you lose the zip code for that post office, you literally cease to be a community. So because then there's a famous story. Napa Valley has a 6-foot wide post office.
Oh, really?
Market. They've increased the size now, but at one point we were charged with relocating them up to St. Helena from this little post office location. And one of the gentleman who's passed away now, one of the largest people in the wine industry, called his congressman and said, "Hey,
can't do this."
Because if they did, they would lose the name of Oakville.
Oh, interesting.
Oakville is not a city. It's a post office. If you're familiar with the East Bay, Alamo is not a city. It's a post office.
Oh, really?
No, they're a county.
I think Bodega Bay had the same issue. We had rented a Airbnb over there, and there was some kind of local protest going on about keeping the post office there, and now that kind of makes sense to me.
I've been in Rough and Ready. We had a similar kind of discussion up in the foothills. Especially in small communities, the post office is the heart of the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Where people meet, it's where they congregate, that's where they have coffee or whatever nearby, and all that stuff. Yeah. No.
And most of usually there's no delivery in those rural areas. So so everybody meets at the post office to get their mail. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah. Well, I think we could talk for another 15 days here, but maybe we'll reconvene this conversation down the road here and kind of see what's happening in the world of government leasing in 3 to 6 months. That would be fantastic. So, John, where can people get a hold of you?
Well, I think my email address is on the screen, jr@crcre.com. But if you look up our company, it's just CRE, Charlie Rainbow Echo.com. And that's our company.
Very easy website to connect with. So that is fantastic. I look forward to talking to you again in the very near future.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.